Right, okay, so welcome to the first interactive that people have spoken TBC guide. So loads of you have seen, where classes rank, are Warlocks the best class, are Hunters the best class, all of that. Well, this is being done live on Twitch with some of the biggest private server players as well, I might add. Shout out to AzzyGod, Fake QT. There's people in this chat who know what they're talking about. PvP, PvE, everything TBC. Didn't mean that to rhyme, but it did. Obviously, if you're not watching it live, you're watching it back on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe, come and check me out over on Twitch so you can join in on the next one, all that rubbish. But ultimately, I'll just give you a little bit of background how I've actually got this information as well. So it's not like all the talking points for each class I've not just made up. So what I've actually done is I've looked through all the tiers on Endless, some memory, some first-hand experience, all of that. But, for example, this is one of the top guilds on Endless, and this is their Magferidon kill. So you can sort of look at the class representation in that list. You can even look at their professions as well, and they've got a disgusting amount of level workers. So obviously, yeah, they do take it very seriously. But, you'll notice a lack of warriors, quite a lot of hunters, a lot of shamans, so you start to build a picture just looking at this. And then obviously this is another guild, so I've tried to use different guilds for every tier that I've looked at as well. So this is another tier, another Magferidon kill, loads of level workers, loads of locks, hunters, not many warriors, not many rogues, well as in they've got one rogue, one warrior. And that warrior is a Prot warrior, no DPS warriors. And the reason I keep focusing on warriors because I want you to understand, as I say, we're going to be talking about warrior first, and this is, more or less what the information's based on. And this is based on the best performing guilds on the server, though. So these are probably the super hardcore ones, but at the end of the day, they know what they're doing. So this is then a Vash kill. So you can see that the group composition doesn't actually change that much throughout the tiers. This is another Vash kill. Again, not much difference there. Still only one warrior, not even a single rogue. Loads of shamans, warlocks, hunters, standard. And obviously you've got shadow priests in there. Well, one. So this is KT. Again, still not much difference. Still lots of level workers, lots of enchanters, and not many DPS warriors. One, in fact. Then this is Archimond. Actually, was that... yeah, so yeah, this is Archimond. Again, still not much change in group composition. You get the point. Shout out to Dr. Kel. So this is actually Get Carried, and yeah, he's a big supporter of the channel. So yeah, I had to put one of these group comps in here. He obviously proved me wrong and took two warriors, but he likes proving me wrong. So, and then yeah, another Archimond kill, and then what I've also looked at then is the top PvP setups for 2s and 3s, but not just on one server. So this is Karazhan. So this is the 2v2 ladder for Karazhan. So loads of Resto Druids, loads of Warlocks. There's like the odd Hunter here and there. Quite a few Priest Rogues, Druid Warriors. There's a couple of Warriors in there as well. One Mage. There's more Druids and Warlocks in the top 18 PvP, like on the PvP ladder, than anything else. So you can straight away see what potentially are the two most powerful classes in 2s. So that's 2s, and that's on Karazhan. I also then looked at a 2s ladder on Endless. So 2 different servers, 2 different player bases on the most part. I know some of us play on both. But yeah, same again, mostly. You can see a lot of Druids. These look like Endless have probably dropped quite a lot of people out of these top teams, because I can't imagine you've got people soloing on 2.2k rating. But yeah, Priests again, you're seeing Priests with Mages, Priests with Rogues, Druid Warrior, Druid Rogue at the top, which is interesting, and then Druid Warlock. But I think it's a bit more spread on Endless, if I'm honest, compared to Karazhan. But Karazhan is newer. And then that's 3s. So then there's the 3s comps, which none of it's changing a great deal. There's still, like, when it comes to PvP, like I was actually saying earlier on the stream, there's not much representation from Hunters, mainly because of sort of if you get locked down, there's really not a great deal you can do. But that's where the information's come from. So it's fairly accurate and up to date with some of the best players in the private server community. So then what we're going to do, as I say, you're going to be in complete control. So obviously you would have seen one of these before, which is your S, A, B, C, D. So this is the tier system. Now we're not ranking by spec, we're ranking by class. So if you was to only be able to play one character in TBC, where would your character rank? So that's an all-round rank of PvP, PvE, solo potential, farming, everything, just everything. Because if we was to just use one example, we saw Warlock really, really well represented in raids and really well represented in arena. We know they do sick damage. We know SL locks, massive survivability, all that sort of thing. So you can have a good guess in advance where they're probably going to go on air. But I'm not deciding. The people are deciding. So everyone watching this stream, you will get a vote. How you vote is once I give you a couple of points, I've got 4 points on each class. After I've gone through a couple of points, I'll put this up on the screen if it wants to go on. So where should Warrior go? So then after hearing a couple of points, you can start then putting your votes in. So the votes are from 1 to 5. 1 being S, 5 being D. I reckon you can work out what the other 3 are, probably, unless you're loaded, then you might struggle. So that's basically how it's going to work, and I want to get through it as quick as possible, so pay attention and make sure you vote on every one, because the more votes, the more then reliable we can say that this resource will be. So, crack it on with Warrior. These are my points that I've made up, all right? So there may be other strong points, other sort of low points, if you like, for each of these classes. But these are the 4 points that stick out to me when it comes to each of these classes. So for Warrior, firstly, representation for DPS is low. So looking at, obviously I've only just shown you some snapshots of what I've been looking at. I've looked at a lot more than that, obviously, and it's fairly consistent. You've got normally one warrior, DPS warrior, in a raid, absolute maximum. The worrying thing for me about that is think about a raid now in Classic. You've got some guilds with, and I don't think I'm exaggerating by saying this, 30 warriors in their raid, in their guild that can raid. And then all of a sudden, their guild's going to go from having 30 warriors to needing 1 per raid. So even if these big guilds went, from Classic to TBC, and then in TBC they was using 3 raid groups, they're still only going to need 3 of their warriors, and then potentially a couple of them as tanks or whatever, but still there's going to be a lot less requirement for them, so that worries me. Obviously their damage output compared to other classes is low. Now Fury brings next to nothing. Alright, you got Battle Shout and stuff like that, but they bring next to nothing, whereas you'd want an Arms Warrior over a Fury Warrior because they give 4% physical damage, and now that's to the Hunter and to the Hunter's pet. And you got to remember, the majority, when you look at these setups, the majority of these big guilds, like, they stack level work in, obviously, for the mini heroism, 5% haste buff permanently for the entire raid, but their ultimate goal really is buffing their warlocks and hunters, because they do the most damage. The more damage you can give to them, their overall percentage of damage is going to be higher, so you want classes that buff those. So actually having an Arms Warrior buffs your hunters quite considerably. So yeah, an Arms Warrior, you probably want 1, but still, their personal DPS is going to be low compared to other classes. So their tanking is exceptional. They are probably one of the, I know there's only 3 tanks, but they're one of them 3 strongest tanks, actually, funny enough. But, there's certain fights that they absolutely excel at, like main tanking Gruul and things like that early on. There's other tanks that, for certain situations like paladins for AoE and for trash, obviously they're gods at that, but a warrior as an all-round main tank for the guild, you're probably going to want. So you're still going to want 1 or 2. So now we're talking out of a guild with 30 in Classic, you might want 3 in your raid group. And they're reasonable in arena with a right setup. So we saw when we was looking at the start, there was a druid and warrior sort of in the top 5. Warriors have always been solid in PvP with a decent healer behind them. Survivability, not amazing. They are wearing plate. You can go one-handed shield and all of that sort of thing. But ultimately, they're just reasonable. They're probably middle of the pack in PvP and TBC, particularly, let's say Season 1, because all we're bothered about really is the start. So they're my main points. Obviously, based on that, where, in what tier do you think it should go? So 1 is S, 2's A, 3B, 4C, 5D. As an overall class for PvE and PvP, where do we think they'd sit as a group? As I say, just think about performance and just everything that everything that you would want to do on your warrior. All right, we've got the votes coming in. Lots of 3s, 4s, 3s, 3s. So we're saying, yeah, I mean, I think that's fairly unanimous so far. No, we've still got votes coming in. And I would agree. I mean, the majority so far are saying, yeah, sort of sits at a B rating. And I think that is probably where I would put them, based on how strong they are as a tank and how they are still required. Prot warriors are going to be sought after. Everybody's going to want them. So from a PvE perspective, we've got people trying to put 7. 7's not an option, but I would agree on a personal sort of basis that I would never play a warrior. So yeah, I would put them at 7. But yeah, I think that's a fairly unanimous outcome. Sitting in a B, which I think B is pretty good. I'll put my personal vote in as well, which, unfortunately, my personal vote would be the only person who put 5, because I still feel personally that they are, they're not very good with damage. They're not particularly good in PvP. They're average in PvP. The only thing they can do is tank. So I would have put them personally a little bit lower than a B, but the people have spoken. And we know, as I say, they are going to be needed. If you're watching this and you're playing a warrior in Classic, you are going to be needed, but we're just not going to need quite as many of you as we've got at the moment. But look, we'll start off with warrior up in B, and then we'll just keep this going because I don't want you getting bored, all right? So next up we have the Shaman. So you can already guess, just based on what we was looking at, Shamans are definitely going to be stacked. And the reason, just in case you don't know, the reason Shamans are going to be stacked is because of rotating heroism. So you can have somebody in the group move the Shaman out of the group once they've popped hero, put another Shaman in their place, ready for it to fall off, and then pop it again. So you'll be doing that for your Warlock group or your Hunter group, whatever way round you're going to do it. So there's no doubt whatsoever that Shamans are going to be wanted, and a lot of them. So Alliance, they need to get their finger out when it comes to leveling. So Elemental, we'll start with Elemental, really strong. And obviously buff the casters. So having an Elemental Shaman in a group with Warlocks, for example, amazing. Warlocks want crit. These give you crit and they give you hit. Obviously Warlocks, you want both. And they give you spell power, and they give you more spell power if they get their 2 set tier 4. So Elemental is going to be wanted. Downside to Elemental, I would say they damage cap quite early. So, you'll be pumping, you'll be doing massive damage in next to no gear, but even when you get sort of full BIS in tier 4, your damage starts to fall off because everybody else is constantly getting stronger, but yours sort of just remains exceptional at the start and then sort of falls off a little bit. But still, everybody's going to want Elemental Shamans. Then, so stacking, like I've already mentioned for Hera and Bloodlust, that's an absolute, just going to be a requirement. You're going to want... I'd go as far as saying 3 or 4 Shamans in a group. So a well-wanted class. Enhancement's decent, but range is just better. Obviously that, again, goes without saying. We know TBC is a ranged expansion. And enhancement's nice, but who are you buffing? That's the thing. You're not really... You are potentially doing a little bit for the Hunters, but you're probably not going to end up in the Hunters group. But... they're decent. If you wanted to play it, get the blacksmithing weapons. The damage you'll do is fine, but ultimately, Elemental's stronger and just more useful. And then you get, so we've just had someone say enhancement is best melee. I would probably say, other than a decent feral druid, yeah, it probably is one of the best. And they're not the strongest healer in PvP, and their DPS specs are not particularly good either. So that's my major negative point around Shamans, is from a PvP perspective, they're not the strongest. You wouldn't. Why take a Resto Shaman over a Resto Druid? If you really want to push ranks hard, a Resto Druid is just going to be it's going to win hands down. And say enhancement, why take enhancement? You might as well take a rogue, or they can be played, but if it's your main from an all-round perspective, if you're as a Shaman main in TBC, you might want an ult. to PvP on, possibly. You know, that's all I'm saying. So start getting your votes in now. My personal, so I'll tell you my personal where I think they sit. I mean, I would put them in the A tier. Personally, I don't want to sort of get anyone, steer anyone's opinions. You know, the only reason I wouldn't have them in the S tier is because I think, from a PvP perspective, that's the only thing that lets the class down. You know, all 3 specs really viable. You're going to want lots of them in your raids. So the PvE they've got wrapped up, absolutely got it wrapped up. PvP for me is the bit where if I was playing a shaman, I would be slightly like, I really want an ult, or I really want my main to be the character that I can do absolutely everything on. So I'll just give you another 10 seconds. And we've got quite a few votes in already. All right, I mean, that'll do. Again, it's unanimous. It would have to take a right turnaround on Twitch for it to be knocked out of A. So yeah, exactly like what I said. You know, I think the A tier is about right, about where it should be sat. You know, we've got other people saying that it sits in an S tier. I have a feeling you probably play shamans. And it would sit in the S tier, for me personally, if there was a lot more representation of them in the higher brackets of PvP. And having seen, I mean, I've actually started talking and watching, and they're now watching a channel. I don't know if they're watching right this second, but the rank 1 Resto Shaman on Karazhan. And they are very good, played well. You know, they are solid, don't get me wrong, but there's better. And ultimately, you know, that's what this is all about. You know, if there's better, then they should sit in a high tier. So, yeah, we're going to stick Shaman in at the A tier. I'm really looking forward to this going on YouTube and getting loads of hate for people saying, no, you're wrong. Everything sits in S tier, because that's what people do. Right. So, next up, we have the Priest. This is where I'm not going to pipe up so early, I think, on my personal preference of the character, because for those who know me know that I absolutely, even though I'm not going to main Priest in TBC, I do absolutely, yeah, I adore playing a Priest. I love Shadow, love healing on one, but, you know, they come with their own problems as well. So the main points I've gone for, so every guild's going to want 1 to 2 Shadow Priests in a group. So that's probably going to be, you know, one, mainly for your mages, to be fair, more than anything else. You know, obviously they're really useful with elemental shamans and boomkins, things that have mana issues, but you're probably not going to see many boomkins in the super hardcore guilds. I mean, you might get one. I mean, boomkins, as you know, they do pump, they do good damage and everything, but there's still better classes to take. Even though they do, you know, stick a boomkin in with your warlocks, but now you're limiting the amount of warlocks that you can all have in the same party, getting buffs from, say, the Ellie, or, you know. So you're probably not going to see that many of them. But Shadow Priests, yeah, definitely 1 to 2. And they do really good damage if they're played right as well. And obviously geared correctly is a big part. So damage output's good, and they buff your warlocks, which is a big important thing. Like I said, all we want to do is buff the warlocks, buff the hunters, and their mana batteries. So if, you know, let's say in the first weeks of progression. See, I think in the first weeks of progression, you're probably going to be more bothered about your healer's mana. When you're going in there with no gear, or you're still in full Nax gear or whatever, you're probably going to be more bothered about your healer's mana than you are actually your damage output. So, you know, it's versatile. You know, you can have a Shadow Priest with the healers so they don't struggle as much, or you can have it with the DPS to make sure that they can keep pumping harder and not going home. So it's a win-win. You know, whatever you need, you can basically slot a Shadow Priest in for. Healing's solid and brings IDS, which is improved Divine Spirit, in case you didn't know. So it basically gives everybody a little bit of spell power. You know, nice buff. Requires you to go Holy Disc rather than full Holy down to Circle of Healing. But it is a nice buff. You might want it in your group. But my big negative with this is if I had a Resto Shaman or I had a Priest, I would take the Resto Shaman over any healing spec priest, even though I've played one for a long time now. And reason being is hero. You know, if ultimately the priest's job, he's there to heal. You're going to get fortitude because you're going to have a shadow priest in every group. You're going to have a shadow priest, so you're going to get fortitude. So really, the only thing the priest brings is healing and IDS. Now, IDS is very minor, very, very minor, compared to the fact that if you brought a Resto Shaman, who's going to give a crap load more spell power, and Hero, and the other totems that can be useful in certain situations and all of that, and an Ankh, you know, it's a no-brainer. You would always take the Resto Shaman over the Priest, or I certainly would anyway. So my downside, PvP strong with high representation at high rating. So yes, we know priests are strong in PvP, no doubt about it. Put a priest with a rogue, put a priest with a mage, amazing. You know, you can't go wrong with a priest when it comes to PvP. So I mean, on that basis, I think you can start getting your votes in. There's a lot more to talk about priest. It's like even when it comes to shadow, you know, shadow is quite gear dependent to a certain extent, because you've got to remember the priest's gear makes a big difference to how useful they are. And I don't mean that from a damage perspective, but it is important because the damage they do returns mana. So and if your priest is going and can't give anybody else mana because he's got no mana himself, you know, your shadow priests do need gear. And obviously they want to get the Frozen Shadow Weave set, just because the crafted tailoring set is really OP. And I really like how close this is actually as well. Got quite a lot of I've got a couple of S tiers, but yeah, majority of people look like they're wanting to see it at an A tier. I would agree. That I would 100% agree with, because they've got all of it. I think all that's stopping them from being in the S tier is the fact that a Resto Shaman in a raid just brings more. So they could get benched. If you're a healing priest, you might get benched for a Resto Shaman. So I would probably agree with that actually. So let's get the priest banged up next to the shaman. Not banged up. I don't mean arrested, obviously. Maybe I do. Right, what we got next? Paladin. Obviously, you know I'm going Paladin. So this was quite a difficult one to actually come up with points for, because I'll be honest with you, there's actually a lot that's good about a Paladin, but there's also a lot that's bad about a Paladin. So I've had to be really objective when I've been looking through all the logs and all of these group compositions of all the top guilds and all the private servers, and then just try and come up with something useful. So Prot Paladins are not a meme. The reason I've gone with that statement in particular is because I get asked it a lot, and people do still think, you know, Paladins can't tank in TBC, yet they're incredibly strong. Not particularly strong as a main tank for all content. So they're, like Mike's saying in the chat now, you know, tank's great. We'll get to the other points that you're saying, but there's certain fights you're going to struggle main tanking as a prop paladin, so you will need a warrior with you or a druid with you as backup. It really depends on what the balancing is like in a classic TBC, but it's just not ideal to be having a main tank as a prop paladin without some sort of support from a better single target tank. Then Ret are viable but not optimal. So again, Ret can obviously do good damage. I'm going to start putting the voting poll up now. So yeah, they're the best dungeon tank without a shadow of a doubt. So yeah, anything AoE, so trash, all of that, they are obviously the best. And Ret is viable. They do reasonable damage. Well, they can do really good damage, to be fair, but they're just not optimal because all they bring is 3% crit. You're better off bringing something that you can buff your hunters and your warlocks with. What I keep saying, it just makes sense. Healing's exceptional, and blessings will be wanted. You know, at the end of the day, their healing is amazing. You know, they struggle going if they're actually good at their class and they're itemized right. And blessings, every raid's going to want blessings, obviously. And multiple blessings. And on the basis, you're probably not going to have Rets. You're going to want a prop paladin and then probably a holy paladin or two. And then we've got, hang on, just give me 1 second. I'll do the mods job for them. So then they can hold their own in PvP as holy, but they're not a resto druid. You know, is the ultimate, the ultimate. That's the best comment on there, really, to be fair. You know, a holy paladin is good survivability, and like I say, you know, infinite mana to a certain extent, but they're still not as good as a resto druid. So if you was wanting to push high ranks, I would choose a resto druid over a paladin any day of the week. But as a paladin, as a main, you can absolutely push ranks. You know, paladin warrior will be really strong. Paladin warlock will be really strong. It is just probably the less mobility as a paladin compared to a resto druid that lets it down slightly. So if you haven't voted already, get your votes in. And we will get it on the board, which it's looking like. I mean, you're very, very generous with all of these classes. I think I'm going to have a vote just to... yeah, I'm going to have a vote just to sort that one out, I think. I've tipped it over the edge. Because, yeah, I think it should sit more as a B. And we look like we've had all the votes in. So the reason I think personally it should sit around a B is the fact that, like I say, not the strongest in PvP. 2 of the 3 specs are definitely very, very good in PvE, but also from a prop perspective, the fact that you can get stronger single target main tanks, that just knocks it down a little bit for me. But the majority have spoken. The majority have said that it's a B as well, so that's all good. What have we got next? So, Druid. First point, obviously, is Feral and Boomkin are viable. And they are viable to a certain extent in Classic. I say to a certain extent because they're not really, are they? It's like anything. Like I said about the Rep Paladin. You know, they're not optimal. They're viable, but not optimal. So Feral and Boomkin. Feral DPS is strong and can do really well. Boomkin is strong and can do really well. And the thing is with Feral, actually, I would say Feral is probably more required than Boomkin because you can have it in the group with the hunters, giving them 5% crit, or with, wherever you want to put it, maybe with a survival hunter and then some melee to give them 5% crit. And then also you can tank. So you're essentially gaining a DPS but still having a really strong single target tank. So you can now have your Paladin tanking everything, your Feral DPSing, and then when the Feral's needed, he main tanks. So that can work well. And as I say, Boomkin's strong. So most guilds will want one Resto Druid in raids, so it's not really a healer you're going to stack. You might not even want any. I think all of those logs that we looked through right at the start didn't have a Resto Druid in the group at all. Because again, Resto Druid or Resto Shaman, a Resto Druid strong, it can do well, but it doesn't really bring a great deal. So amazing tanks due to flexibility and armor capping early. So yeah, you get 4-piece tier 4 and a few other bits, and you can literally be armor capped, which yeah is really strong for any physical bosses. So amazing single target tanks, even though they're quite boring to play. And yeah, as I say, the flexibility. So going in, if you went in with a paladin and a warrior into Karazhan, for example, you're really gimping yourself on bosses where you only need one tank, and it's like half the instance where you only need one tank. Some of them you don't even need a tank. So yeah, the flexibility from a druid is great, and PvP gods. Resto Druid is just going to be the easiest, and mark my words, 100%, a Resto Druid will be the easiest to get Gladiator with. No doubt about it whatsoever, because they are just that strong in TBC. So start getting your votes in. Where should they sit? 1 for S? It's not a clue. And yeah, best off tank, best PvP healer, good raid healer, 1 per raid, decent DPS specs. Exactly, Mike. Just all round strong class. Have a sip of my wine while you get your votes in. Quite a few people think it should sit at A. I mean, we've not had anyone at C or D yet, but I have a feeling I know what class is going to go in D. No spoilers. Right, okay. So we've got some Druid haters that think it belongs in B and C. No. It's definitely an S tier. If you want an all-round strong, drinking wine out of a pint glass, really sophisticated. If you want an all-round strong class to play in TBC, yeah, Druid is 100% one of those. You can't go wrong. All specs viable, wanted in PvE as main tanks, wanted in PvP in PvE as DPS, wanted in PvP by anybody who PvPs. You can't go wrong. Amazing solo potential, amazing for farming. just, yeah, can't knock it. Absolutely epic, 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 epic. So next, we've only got 4 classes left. Shouldn't take long. So Hunter. So low gear requirement for high damage. Obviously, we all know why that is. And if you're watching this and you haven't got a clue, then I shall tell you. So you basically, your BIS gear up until tier 5, end of tier 5, comes from dungeons. So you want your 4-piece Beast Lord as soon as possible, which comes from normal dungeons. So absolutely really, really easy to get. You will be topping damage meters if you know how to use a 1-button macro on every single boss without fail, all the way up until Samuel Plateau. As I say, even beating Warlocks. Warlocks are really strong, but I think a good Hunter against a good Warlock, Hunters will win. Continue their high damage throughout, so that was what I was just saying. Obviously, it's not like they start strong and finish weak. They start strong, finish strong. Guilds will stack a fair few, so whereas at the moment you don't want that many Hunters in your classic guilds, you're going to see an influx of Hunters because the majority of guilds are going to want, and I'm not exaggerating, I don't mean in one single raid, but I mean in one single guild, you're probably going to want 6 or 7 Hunters, easily. High burst but low survival, low representation at the top. So that's from a PvP perspective. So if you was like a BM hunter, for example, you got high burst. Yeah, all right. While your ferocious crap is up for your pet, can't think of the word off the top of my head. You know, you're practically unkillable. But then once that's gone, you can't do a lot. You can get stun locked down easy. You can get in some real problems in PvP. Other specs in PvP, you know, marksman's pretty good if played right, but ultimately they're not the most useful PvP class. Good for world PvP and battlegrounds, but arenas, not so much. But a good hunter, do not get me wrong, can absolutely, they can do amazing in PvP. And you do see the odd hunter up at the top, but I think it takes an exceptional skill cap to be able to do that. So get your votes in. And I must admit, I'm sort of agreeing with the votes that, you know, between S and A tier, it is close. I think 2 healers, 1 hunter in freezes BIS. Again, I'm sure in certain setups and stuff, you know, and the right person playing the class, absolutely, they probably can really, really do well. But it's the same for most classes. You know, like a feral DPS druid, for example, you're not going to see him all over the rankings, but there will be that one that's exceptional with another a resto druid, resto shaman, paladin, whatever, you know, who ranks well. But you know, I'm going for the rule, not the exception. But the people have spoken, and they think it belongs in an S tier, and I would probably agree on the most part. I would probably put them there just because of how. Yeah, I wish there was an A minus and A plus. It is a difficult one, Hunter, because yeah, as I say, they are so strong all the way through. It's PvE, PvP. It's an overall. Sorry if you missed the start. It's as an overall class. So the way we're trying to think about it is if you could not have an ult. So you've got one main character. You want to be able to do everything on that character. You know, so we're taking the strengths of PvE, strengths of PvP, everything into account to say, well, where does it sit, basically? But, yeah, imagine getting the top one on the DPS with a steady shot macro. I know, it's crazy. But, yeah, all right, so Hunter up at S. I mean, we need some C's and D's here. I mean, it's looking a bit top-heavy. They can't all be this good. Right, so, Mage. Once I get rid of that. There we go. So we'll start again. So, Mage. All specs throughout TBC playable. Now, please note, I said playable. Again, I don't mean optimal. Obviously, we know in sort of two-piece tier 5, Arcane does start doing really, really good damage. You know, with a Shadow Priest and taking all the innovates, yeah, they can absolutely pump. Tier 4, probably going to be Frost or Fire. You know, but so you will probably play about with all mage specs throughout the expansion. So, like I've said, 2-piece tier 5 increases damage dramatically. The only thing I would say, so they don't provide any substantial buff to locks and hunters, so which is a big deal. And you don't really see that many mages in these top guilds because, yeah, you put a couple of arcane mages in, they are gonna pump. Don't get me wrong, but I think you could put a couple of warlocks in their place and probably pull ahead a little bit more. I mean, I've seen multiple kills on Archimon, Vash, KT, Illidan, where there's been 0 mages in the group, because they're a bit lackluster on what they do bring, in my opinion. But that, you know, yeah, 1 per dungeon, get their food and buffs and kick them. Exactly. So I didn't vote on a hunter. It's all right. I would have put the hunter in the S tier anyway, so it went in the right place. So mage rogue strong, mage priest is strong due to control and survivability. So mages are extremely strong in PvP. So start getting your votes in. I mean, I will vote on this one, but purely because, like I say, I'm always basing it on other towards other classes. You know, what is stronger? 2 pump pyro for season 1. I'd like to see that actually. So I think we're all sort of in agreement that they're not at the top. They are middle to low. I think it is the fact that you could get benched, and you know that's what I said about the same about the Holy Priest or Disc Priest either. You know, you could find yourself getting benched because being compared to a Resto Shaman, you just don't bring as much. It's as simple as that. But it looks like it's going to sit middle of the pack. Have we got all our votes in? Because I'm going to go for it, and we're going to be putting it at a B tier, and I already know where these last 2 are going to go. We will talk at the end to make sure we don't want to juggle anything around, so we will have one more chance. But that was close. That was between going B and C, so yeah, probably about right, to be fair. So rogue. I don't really want to put this first point on. Well, we will discuss all the classes again. We'll go through, make sure we don't want to juggle anything about. But so rogue, I think the first point really is reroll, and I know that sounds a little bit harsh. Hang on, don't vote, because I've not even got the poll set up yet. So I think the first point for a rogue should be to probably play a class that's useful. I don't know how you feel about that. If you voted, the poll wasn't up, but I will put the poll up because you all seem so eager to get your vote in for this one. And I don't mean that harshly. I just think in your guild now in Classic, there are probably 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 rogues. You know, that somewhere in that sort of region. You ain't going to get in a raid. You ain't all going to get in a raid. It's absolutely as simple as that. Cut and dry. You will not all be getting in raids because there ain't enough room for you. You're going to want 1 in a raid max, if that. You don't need 1. I mean, they improved expose armor if you haven't got a warrior main tank. Then that's it. Your usefulness is done. There's better people to do interrupts. There's better people. That's it. I mean, what else do you bring? So from a PvE perspective, useless. Like I've said, absolutely low representation in PvE across the board. They do start to get competitive towards tier 6 onwards, especially with, obviously, Warglaves, but probably not going to give them to your rogue. I'd rather give them to a tank for off-spec, personally. And then, yeah, PvP is where the strength is, obviously. High burst, high mobility, high survival. So we know they are strong, super strong gods in PvP. But that's it. That's where their strength is. So if you're playing a rogue and you're wanting a PvE, you're probably not going to bother. Dr. Cow, I've shouted you out in this video, mate, because I've been looking at your group composition logs from Endless for Get Carried. So thanks for that. So yeah, I think we all agree that rogues are a rogue ult for PvP. Absolutely. I would like a rogue ult for PvP. But as I say, when we're looking at these classes, I want us to look as if we are locked to one character. We can't have an ult. We want one character that we can do it all on. That is then going to dictate where on the board it goes. So rogues, we're saying, is going to sit at definitely a solid D. I've got no argument. I've not even voted because there isn't a 6 or a 7 for me to vote on. Or a delete, if there was just a delete class. I mean, I might just delete it. Should I just delete the icon? It's not even worth being on there, is it? Oh, we'll have it on there. Sit on the D. Yeah, sit on the D, rogues. Exactly. Right, we're left with warlocks. Should I just put it there already and save some time? No. I'll do it properly. So, the warlock. I really don't want to. I don't want to waste your guys' time talking about this one for too long. Let me just get the poll up straight away, and let's smash through it. So the poll is on. Where should warlocks go? Strong through all of TBC. Some early bosses are a lot harder without one. You know, it goes without saying there are bosses in Karazhan specifically where you will have a really hard time raiding without at least one warlock. Assuming that the content's going to be tuned to a reasonable difficulty, which no, Blizzard probably won't. It'll be dog shit. And we'll just face roll everything with 30 warriors. So the more you stack, the more they buff each other. So, you know, the more warlocks you got in the group, the stronger they all get. High representation and extremely effective with multiple comps. Obviously, one of the best DPS in the game, in TBC. Full stop. Absolutely epic. Amazing in PvP. Amazing in PvP. PvE. I meant to say the other one. It's this wine. It's really good. So I reckon we're just going to stick those straight on the S tier. We've got nothing in the C tier. So what I'd like to do now, just for the last couple of minutes of this video, because we are done. Oh, see, I was getting confused. I was going to put them down on the C tier just because there's nothing there. Are we happy? Are we happy with where everything sits? Because, yeah, I would agree straight away with Roosed in chat. Thank you. That Warrior, I would potentially drop down to C just purely because of their usefulness with only one spec. And it looks like everyone's unanimous. Or becoming unanimous with that. We've got to remember, a Warrior, they excel as a tank. Absolutely excel as a tank. But outside of that, you can live without them. You're going to have Warriors having a hard time getting into raids, guilds. So, yeah. Melee just suck. So, getting to C. Right, okay. I'll move it over so my head's not in the way. Is there any other changes? I mean, I can do... Let me do a real quick revote then, because people are saying about mages as well. Let me just do a real quick revote on mages, and we'll see if that changes. If it doesn't change, you know, stick with your same option. Don't be sort of, you know, swayed by anyone else and what they're saying. If you genuinely think a mage should sit in the S tier, say, I want it in the S tier. But you can start your votes now on the mage. So this is a revote to move it. It's currently sat in the B tier. I mean, ultimately, as I say, it is very middle of the pack for me. Whether it's in B or C, I could agree with both, even though they do very good damage. But as I say, reputation in raids is not going to be the highest. Yeah, a lot of people seem to be in agreement to keep it in B. Seems to be winning. And I'll be honest with you, I probably would as well. So I'm even going to put my vote in. I would probably keep it in B as well. I mean, the Warrior definitely deserves to be in C and probably on its own. And the Rogue definitely deserves to be sitting on the D, without a doubt. But I think that, for me, about rounds up this video. As I say, obviously, for you guys who are rewatching it on YouTube, this was done live. You know, make sure you like, subscribe. Come over to Twitch, check me out, ScottyJ87 in the description. But I think that's accurate. I would sign my name against that. Well, I'm going to sign my name against it by uploading it.